Hello, my guests. Welcome to Lucia Craft. So both of you focus on cooperative practice and peaceful future respectively. Do the core concepts of global governance initiative like multilateralism and people-centered align with the needs of Sweden and Europe you've observed?
I think that, first of all, I'd like to say it's brilliant that there is a very important government in the world who produces these initiatives for global discussion, because what we need desperately in this world is somebody who looks into the future and not only the past and the present. I like very much the strong emphasis on the United Nations, which turns 80 this October. And we cannot have a common development of the world, of humanity, unless we respect the laws, the principles, and the norms. So I think people-centered multilateralism and all that is excellent.
Yeah, well, I want to say that I think the series of initiatives that have come from President Xi Jinping are a clear perspective from China as to how the world can move from the old unipolar idea of dominance on the part of you could say, the Anglo-American power structure established essentially after the end of World War II. That is now clearly declining. And this initiative establishes a framework which clearly is in coherence with the UN Charter.
Yes. What specific cooperation spaces do you see between Europe and China under the Global Governance Initiative framework?
I think what we have seen is that it's if you look at, for instance, the issue of tariffs and economics and trade, I'm getting rather frustrated because the European Union leadership goes to China and is very well and nicely received. And then Madame von der Leyen afterwards says that she makes it conditional. Future cooperation between the European Union and China, it will be made conditional upon China influencing Russia to stop the war in Ukraine. Now, if you start there, there's no global governance. There is only a futile attempt to dominate again and say, we make conditions.
Yeah, well, I think that what Jan has said is completely in line with my way of thinking. I would add, though, politicians have no vision, no thought process about the actual emerging changes, which are clearly represented by Xi Jinping's initiative in the latest context for the global governance initiative. You're talking about the EU and you're talking about Western Europe. They have aligned themselves with the idea of whether you want to call it a unipolar world, or I prefer to define it as the remnants of the post-war Anglo-American empire. But I think that this is what I also would characterize as geopolitics. That is a division of the world into blocks where you must have an enemy image. However, I would say that there is a clear difference in Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe is not following precisely this agenda. Indications that even countries who have been a part of NATO are recognizing the importance of working with China.
Yes, and both of you have mentioned the biased Western public opinion on China. How to help European public truly understand the global governance initiative's value?
And I'm a staunch believer in people-to-people cooperation. I think it's wonderful that China has opened up, made visa much more easy to get, so you can stay for a longer time and all that. Of course, not reciprocated by the West. But it means that people could go and see for themselves. And when they will find ways to cooperate people to people. If you're an engineer, you're a doctor, you're a peace worker, it's just to start working, do projects together, writing together, arguing things together, talking about global governance together, go to conferences, whatever we can do where in the profession we have. And secondly, that's where the benefits would be for both parties. China and the West, because at the moment the Western politicians are not able to take in intellectually what is going on in China, the Chinese model, the Chinese initiatives. There's no discussion of them. So finally, I think that the bias will fall apart at some point.
Yeah, well, I totally support Jan's point on the question of people-to-people communication. People who I have worked with here in Sweden, who have had the opportunity, for example, as journalists who have traveled to China and have changed dramatically their view of what actually is going on. The population here in Sweden in general has no access to that. However, I do think that China also needs to understand in a more profound way how European thinking and structures and history and culture have worked. So I'm going to continue that task as a friend of China, but also as a European who can promote the kind of thinking in Europe that will characterize a new leadership that is based on how we can cooperate and move humanity forward with what Xi Jinping has called a community for a shared future for mankind.
Yes, like you mentioned, we should work together for a shared future. So from a future perspective, what's the most critical direction to advance the global governance initiative for practical results?
I would say three things. First of all, a strong United Nations. But I'm very dismayed by the fact that the Western world never mentions the UN anymore as a model, as an image. We have undermined the UN and its authority and replaced it, or tried to replace it, with American leadership, with European, to a certain extent, leadership, and with NATO ravaging the whole place way outside its member states. Secondly, alternative defense thinking. There is no way we can have peace in the world with continuing offensive deterrence. And China can, with its defensive thinking in Sun Tzu, etc., spearhead a new thinking about that. And finally, people to people, as we have mentioned. I think what will move people, will move the world more than governments, more than anything else, is that people come together.
I would just add that one of the things I've done in light of this concept of people-to-people communication, I had the possibility when I was in China as of late to give lectures to university students, which were remarkably successful in the sense that young people need to have guidance on how to develop the thought processes that lead to cooperation and understanding. So education of young people in the proper manner, not simply generally, but understanding the deeper thought processes which unite people and unite civilizations. This, I think, is a very crucial point in order to bring about a successful implementation of the, for example, now the Global Governance Initiative in European society and in society as a whole.